interesting, but I'm sure it will be debate and conversations tonight. And all the best and Happy New Year, because I think it's still time to wish you all, and a peaceful a year where we can rebuild together a better future for ourselves and for our children. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ambassador. So the first time of the program is we're going to watch a short documentary that was produced by Mud Art Company, that is a dance company based in Kaduna. So I would like for Mr. Ochayo Gaba to come on stage. So he's the creative director and the founder of the company. So that you have a bit of background before we screen the documentary, he will introduce himself, his work, then we will watch the documentary, and then you will be able to ask all the questions that you want. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ochayo Gaba, as you all heard. I'm a dancer from northern Nigeria, Kaduna State, and I'm the founder of Mud Art Company, like she said. And so the documentary that you're about to see today is titled Compound, and Compound is a dance project about all of the ethno-religious crises that we've had to suffer in the north, which I happen to be a part of, which I've had to experience all my life. Because I'm originally from Benue State, but I've lived all my life in Kaduna State. So these are occurrences that I've had to experience directly, and I've been impacted by them. I mean, strongly. I've lost friends and family members in crisis. I mean, that has happened, ethno-religious crisis and fight between ethnicities and ethnic groups in Kaduna State, northern Nigeria. So I decided, to actually do a dance work that can actually speak to the people directly, because, I mean, I've done dance works that are full of abstractions. I mean, but I decided to come up with an initiative that, can get me to, the man, the ordinary man on the street, to understand the meaning of cohesion and why we need to be together as a people. And also I've watched how Kaduna State has transformed over the years from all of these crises, and I felt this strong need and to do something about it. And with my company, we did the Compound project. And so what we did was to collaborate with local artists to be able to get to the hearts of the people as a contemporary dance company in Kaduna State. And we recorded some of the creative processes which you're going to be seeing tonight. Our collaborations with the local artists, our stage performances, our public performances. You're going to be seeing all of that. And also I went on to have conversation with certain people that I really look up to. 2 professors, the First Lady of Kaduna State, and also a dance veteran who is quite much older. To talk to them, to hear their perspective about the issue that we're facing currently in northern Nigeria. So you're going to be seeing all of that in the documentary. So yeah, have a good watch. Thank you so much.
Dance for me is a very complex human expression that encapsulates the very essence or essences of our being. So a dance can be an expression of death, might, hope, adventure, and yet it can also represent rebirth or birth, and at the same time it can represent exclusion and inclusion.
Has been that probably if harnessed well, it can be able to change the society. We need performances now that can talk to the people directly, not just individuals watching from the comfort of their homes, probably going into the society, discussing with the people, even the people partaking within the dramatic performances, that will add value to the messages that people want to promote. Even the peaceful atmosphere that was there in the 60s and 70s, things have dramatically changed. People are now looking at themselves from an enclave, and the enclaves mostly are either religious, they're either cultural, or they're regional, or they're mostly tribal.
Dance for Compound is to draw ideas from how people once lived in a compound, and to use the components of a typical compound in northern Nigeria is about bringing in the things that we once shared in common. You know, things like the well, like the hanging ropes for clothes, for like, you know, the wall, and, you know, just sharing that narrative and for people to understand and to remember how, you know, we once shared these things. And it has built a core part of our being, you know, as humans in this region.
The challenge that we have as human beings is the compartmentalization of our human experiences, that the past belongs to the past, the present belongs to the present, and there's a sense in which the future also belongs to the future that we don't see.
Probably what has changed in the last few years has to do with the transformation within the system. If before people are only after how to feed themselves, the Almajiri phenomena, the marriage phenomena and all this kind of stuff, now they are now discussing what obtains within the system now. You are talking about politics, you are talking about how to manage the society, you are talking about a crisis within the system.
As a matter of fact, my father had one person, his name was Umaru. And that Umaru was the one person that my father would go and confide in. And my father was a pastor, by the way. Umaru was a Muslim in our village. But when he was in trouble and he needed somebody to save him from that trouble, say borrow 1 or 2 naira, he would go to Umaru.
Because when people see, maybe in terms of dance, a situation where people from different cultures are living together harmoniously, I think that will happen.
We were taking things for granted until it degenerated to this point where you look at the town and you see 2 towns, 2 cities, Kaduna. The city of a different kind of people, a city of another kind of people. Whereas when I first came to Kaduna, my immediate neighbor on my left was a Catholic, my neighbor to the right was a Muslim. That did not count. It only counted for recognizing one another.
The whole north now, you can see you can divide it into 5 or 6 zones instead of just one particular zone that was there. Despite the religious and their tribal sentiments, people were one. But now, when you are talking about northwest, within the northwest also we are talking about people who are living within the northwest. those either Muslims or Christians, those who are Hausas or Fulanis, those that are TV or Idoma and all this kind of aspect. When you come to cities like Kaduna, that's why you find a lot of disengagement.
When I look at my childhood, my best friends were Muslims in secondary and primary school. We went to eat in their homes. They were very serious, committed Muslims. Costume, what we wear then in the 60s and 70s, were just clothes that cover our nakedness. They were not hijabs. We didn't have hijabs or niqabs. And of course, we didn't have girls that wore clothes that exposed most of their anatomy. Yet, we have some of the finest human beings that are able to appreciate difference, not in terms of what we wear, but in terms of who we are. And so we related to people, to one another, our neighbors, not by their names or by what they wear or what they have, but who they are.
Kaduna is a state in northern Nigeria. It's a place where I was born and I was raised with my closest people, my friends, my family. It's a place that brings people from different race and culture and ethnicity, and it's a beautiful space. It's a cultural space. It's an artistic space. It's a place for me to grow, and I've had to live my life, and I've had to develop myself as a human being, from exchanging and connecting with the people in this region. I think it's the core reason for who I am as a person, as a human being. Is a place that I want to live most of my life in.
In a compound, there are happenings, there are conflicts, there are misunderstandings that take place. But these happen within time and space. And there's a sense in which dance as a medium can take us through that. So dance becomes a therapy.
So compound for me came up as a result of my experiences in northern Nigeria, how we once lived together as a people. The concept of compound just pushes the idea that we need each other to be able to coexist.
You are introducing an artistic medium that is not really new, but the platform, the project that you are presenting is new, because you are speaking to us in a medium that we know, yet we don't know.
Na yi godiya sosai, duniya ta Allah ce, lafira ta Allah ce, ba mai hana mu holewa.
To ni da kai da muka tashi a cikin zaɓi guda ɗaya, sai ka ga an zo ba wani a ce ni zan kashe ka, kai za ka kashe ni, muna neman juna mu kashe. Wai to me yasa haka?
Taimaka ma bawanka, mu samu zaman lafiya. Don ci gaban ƙasa, na kira maza mata, mu zauna lafiya ya fi, don ci gaban ƙasa ne, don ci gaban ƙasanmu, don ci gaban ƙasanmu, zala-zala ne ya gyara, taimaka ma bawanka, kar bawanka ya lalace. Zala ne ya ya gyara taimaka ma bawanka taimaka ma bawanka kar bawanka ya lalace.
Yes, let's give another round of applause for the work of Mud Heart Company. Yes. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also, I want to say that it's a premiere of the documentary. Before we open the flow of questions, I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a few more words about, first, why you came into this kind of topic for, your project, like your dance project, and also why you wanted to make a short documentary and how, this medium is a bit different than just a performance, so why you also wanted to document it in the form of a documentary. Okay,
the reason why I came up with this initiative was because I was feeling insecure in northern Nigeria. I've had to encounter Muslim extremists, and I've also had to encounter like Muslims who are like my closest friends. So, but then there's always that feeling of insecure, that, even when I'm with my closest friends that are Muslims, I'm like, what could possibly happen, So I didn't want all of that, and I decided to introduce culture and art, in the form of dance, to be able to also help to redefine northern Nigeria, because we have too many stereotypes. I mean, most of you here don't want to come to northern Nigeria because of our stereotypes. And for me, Compound is to also like redefine the entire region. I mean, Kaduna State is rich in culture. You should look at Zaria. You should look at Kaduna State. And I mean, historically, Kaduna State is like a representative of the entire Nigerian state. There's no tribe that you cannot find in Kaduna State. I mean, Kaduna State is like the Lagos of northern Nigeria. And it has always been a custodian of culture, especially in the northern region, because it was once the Northern Protectorate. So all of the expatriates that came and everything relating to culture, I mean, a part of Festac, a huge part of Festac occurred in Kaduna State, that is referred to as the Doba. So Kaduna State is known as a custodian of art and culture, but right now it doesn't seem that way. I mean, it's a terrorist state, and people are scared to come to the region. So for me, it's just to show that there's still culture, and culture actually welcomes everyone, to come into that space to connect with the people and how they've lived their lives. So it's about redefining the people for outsiders. It's about redefining the region for us to the people also, because once a stereotype is too much on you as a person, you begin to see yourself, act in that manner. And so, yeah, it's about, just making the North a safer place for everyone, that would love to visit the region. So, and also for myself personally, because I want to live and raise my family, my parents, my friends are still there. And yeah, you see these things every day. You see the divide. Kaduna State is divided into two. There's the northern region and there's the southern region. Christians in the north, in the south, Muslims in the north. And I don't want that. Yeah.
I think it's working now, yeah. So, thank you very much for this initiative. It's very important to try to create the nexus between, culture, and peace building, which I think is what you're driving towards. This is a bit personal for me if I look at my own research experience in Kaduna. So I did my doctoral research in Zangon Kataf, And the first time I was actually threatened with death was asking about Zamani Lekot, who was like the primary subject of my research. And that was simply because of his ethnic extraction, as a leader of the Kataf people, Christian, Southern Kaduna, like you mentioned. So I think this is targeted at the goal of integration, bringing people together, using art forms, And my own question is, what do you project? This is like a preview, a premiere, right? How do you think this is going to be accepted? Of course, you'll be talking about stereotype, people looking at you in one form. Do they take art seriously as something that could convey a message? Knowing fully well that art has a beauty of interpretation from different perspectives, Do you think this dance or other art forms have the potential of passing across this message and creating the change that you desire, you know, among the people. So how do you think it's going to be accepted? Do you think it stands a chance? Do you think people are going to take it seriously? Because we see you interacting with people of high intellectual, you know, context. How do the ordinary people see this? So does it in any way reflect that they should, you know, change something about the way of living? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but initially I didn't know that it was going to be that impactful until we went on to the streets to have like the street performances. And what it did for us was to usher us into the community. I mean, dance is thought-provoking and it's quite stimulating, and you know, it awakens one's curiosity. And once we got on the public space and we started to dance, I mean, the people were surprised to see us. They knew for sure that we were not like Northerners. I mean, you can easily tell that I'm not a Northerner, but so that awakened their curiosity. And what the dance did was to be able to open up a space for conversations, for the dialogue. So, I mean, dance is very complex in the sense that it can have a lot of abstractions around it, but then also it opens up the door for any other possibility. If you want to dialogue with the people, you can get their attention with the dance. I mean, the people saw us dancing on the street and they didn't understand what we were doing until the end. And they started to ask questions. And that's the end part where I started to talk to them and just inform them about the project and why it is very important and that we learn how to coexist with ourselves. So even if they don't understand the narrative in that sense, it is also a doorway for any other initiative to be able to penetrate the people. You want a dialogue, you want the people you want to get their attention. I mean, dance is not harmful to them in that way because we also imbibed, you know, things from the culture, the music, the costumes. There are certain attires that is very peculiar to the Northerners, and we use them in our costumes. And you know, they were really, you know, surprised, and they were really curious to see what we're doing, and they needed to understand this. So, I mean, that could have opened us up to just any possibility, you know, because at some point we had local dancers that even joined us. They performed, and then we danced also, and then they saw the music. I mean, every music that we used for the production was a Hausa original Hausa music. So that also kind of awakened the curiosity, and it was stimulating for them. Yes, every of the instruments and the sounds that was produced, the entire composition was in Northern music. So yeah, that gave us a doorway to, you know, get in to the hearts of the people.
Thank you. Does anybody have a question or comment? Yes?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Liliani. Well done. I see and I understand and appreciate what you're trying to do. I lived in Kaduna myself for some time. I actually did my NYC in Kaduna. And I don't know. I like what you're doing. For me, another angle to it would have been, or I'm not criticizing what you did. I'm just thinking of a situation where the different culture and cultural representation, you know, could be visualized, where you had Igbos, you had Hausas, you had what do you call it, Yorubas, different people in their different culture, and there was unity in that diversity. And what makes everyone kind of uniform now, what binds us now, is the grief, the ethnic wars, the tribalism and everything. So the sackcloth and the end part of it could have depicted that, because that's now what it has become. Everything has become tears, blood, and sorrow, which it shouldn't be from what it was. So that transgression from that cultural unity to this, for me, also would have gone a long way. But like I said, I do appreciate what you're doing, and well done.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I thought about that over and over and over again. You know, talking to myself that why does it have to be just the Hausa culture? I mean, if you're talking about the concept of unity, why not bring in different cultures, different tribes, you know, in one space? But the thing is, this is about northern Nigeria for me, and the project itself has the ability to evolve over time. And I was sharing with a few people, even how that it has the ability to be recreated. And what I intend to do is to move into, different regions, and also create with the people. And this will lead me to answer the question that you asked about why I had to record the documentary. And the documentary is because Nigeria is quite big, and we cannot neglect the place of the northern region in our Nigerian system, in the politics, in whatever we do, in all of the systems that exist. And starting from northern Nigeria is a big step for me. And the reason why I'm having this documentary is so that it can prompt other artists, in different regions. And because this is a huge work that I don't think I can be able to do on my own. So it is to awaken other people's initiatives also, and so we can have like that synergy and that energy. If someone saw this, in the East and wants us to do something, then we can collaborate, between regions and between states and between tribes. So I've had to just pick up this as a unit, of the compound, to just start with. But it is quite complex, and we did this with little resources, to be able to come up with this. So I'm really looking forward to the future and seeing how we can all merge, different cultures together in one space. And I'm really looking forward to that. It will be beautiful. Thank you.
Hi, Ochai. Thank
Hi,
you.
Emmanuel.
Can I start? I have to stand up. It's a beautiful piece. Thank you very much. Also, coming from northern Nigeria, from Kano, I definitely get the spirit that you're trying to communicate, because also firsthand I can see the decline of the compound model, where nowadays everyone is becoming more and more into themselves and into their ideology. So I guess my question is, do you think that the erosion of the compound model is in itself a proof that kind of this shallow integration kind of model doesn't work if you don't target what the real cause of disunity is, which is that people hold on to their beliefs so tightly and they hold it as truth, and that integration in this sense wouldn't necessarily work if they are not prompted to question their fundamental assumptions and be willing to engage in dialogue, necessarily dialogue, that they can even change in the process. So do you think that the compound model is already like this sort of failure of integration already, or you think that it's something that if we try it again, it might work or it might not work?
Okay, if I get you correctly, I think what you're trying to say is the model of compound. Does he like try to change the people, or does he help? Does he integrate into, their belief system or something?
Yeah. Is it like we're trying to integrate people without necessarily inviting them to question their beliefs? Which is
Yes. I think that's the concept of compound. Actually, it's to remind you, like I said, the idea of compound is from my personal experiences, not from books that I read or from conversations that I had. I lived through this transformation, through the reinvention of Kaduna State, and I lived in a compound, and we just connected that way. And I've learned from different religion and different ethnicity, different tribes. The idea of compound is not to get you to believe something else. It's to remind you of who you truly are, even. Northern Nigeria is a very cultural space. We were talking, and she was telling me about her works in Zaria, and I'm like, you should see Zaria, you should go to Zaria, you should see the monarch in Zaria. The cultural space in Zaria is massive, but people are afraid to come to Zaria. So that's why I'm using like the typical traditional music. It's beautiful. Didn't you like it when you heard it? You should see them play live. It's vibrating. It can get your heart beating, and you would want to weep for the region, because the culture is rich, and I think that's what I want to present to people. I'm not trying to say, oh, you shouldn't be this or you shouldn't be that. I'm just saying that you are not the killer. You are not a terrorist state. That's what I'm saying. You can be anything else, but we both know that you're not a terrorist state. You're not a terrorist. So we shouldn't be associated with that in northern Nigeria. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not questioning anybody's belief system.
Actually, I would like to ask you something, because you mentioned something about that this was your experience and not reading books, but at the same time you interview academics. And so, I'm an academic and we have many academics here. So I wanted to ask you if what is your relationship with the university? We know there is also a big university in Kaduna State, and with academics, with professors of arts and culture. Is it in interaction? Because we forgot to mention that you also work for the Kaduna State Commission. You can also tell us about, your work also in more like the academia and government sphere.
Okay, so personally I work in the Kaduna State History and Heritage Department of the Government House, and I have access to certain things and an archive of photographs and videos. And so I've seen northern Nigeria in photographs, from the late, pre-colonial eras, to early colonial eras. So I've seen how we just transform, and it's surprising and it's shocking to see what Kaduna State has become today, because I looked at the photographs in our archives, and, and I look at Kaduna State right now, and there are two different cities, actually. Like I said, Kaduna State has always been the custodian of cultural relations and cultural practices. So I've seen photographs of, stage plays, but these are things that you hardly see in Nigeria right now, in Kaduna State. So my relationship with that, I've got to learn so much from that when I started, the compound project. And then also that was what took me to interview, the two professors that I had this conversation with, because I needed to know. But I think what is quite interesting for me is how most of them shared from their experiences, not from the academia. They spoke to me about their life's experiences and what they have had to also go through. And it didn't really matter if I was young or if I was just an artist or if they were academics, But we had the same experiences. They would tell you about how the Christians would tell you about how they related, with the Muslims, and likewise, the Muslims. So, I went to them to, I wanted to be correct, by the books. Are we in line with the project? And, I got to learn so much about even their experiences. And, it's quite shocking about how, all of this has had to happen. And they also, who are into the academics, are also, a part of it, and they've witnessed it, like, directly. So most of them just, shared with me from, their experiences, not just by the books. So it's quite interesting to know that. And anybody that you meet in Kaduna State, has that homely feel. Kaduna State is a home. If you live in Kaduna State for some time, you just develop this homely feel about Kaduna State. So when you see what's happening there right now, it's always heartbreaking. And when you talk to someone, they always speak to you from their heart and from their experiences about the state. Yeah.
Anybody has a other question or comment? Yes, up there.
Hi, my name is Georgina. This is more of a comment.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Sorry, this is more of a comment. I just want to say that, so I'm from Nigeria, and I always my mission was to travel everywhere in Nigeria, and I was very afraid to go to the north, and it took me a while to go to the north, and when I went, I was still scared. I saw a lovely place, but I was still not comfortable, and seeing your documentary, I realized how self-conscious I was, and I'm grateful to see your documentary, because it like you said, like it shows that like we are hammered so much by stereotype and stuff, and even when you're ready to go, you're still stuck in it. And so seeing a documentary like this, it helps. And so thank you. That's what I want to say.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. If I could just touch a bit on your work with the government, so you're privy to like some historical context when it comes to Kaduna State, and this has inspired, your work. So do you think the government is doing enough to expose this history, to the general public in Kaduna State? Perhaps they could draw the kind of inspiration that you're drawing. In other words, working for the government, do you think there's a possibility, for you to stretch your work further? I know you're doing something on dance as well. Do you think you can go beyond that, to emphasize the fact that if we go back to our historical context, perhaps there could be some answers to certain questions, that you're asking within the present state. And I don't want it to stop in Kaduna State. I also want you to touch a bit in Benue. Of course, you know that apart from the Hausa Fulani and the other locals challenges, there's also the Idoma, Tiv, historical, challenge. So how do you think history, what role do you think history can play in all of this, in helping us retrace our steps so that the kind of rebuilding together that we're looking towards is something that we can aspire to as a possibility?
I think while we were chatting earlier, we spoke about the place of history in all of this. And I think history is core, in these situations. And it would go a long way if we can all go back to our history, And that was why, I would always say that Compound is about remembering, is about making the people remember, what this region used to be like, So the government, the government is doing what they can. And I mean, the recent administration, especially in Kaduna State, is quite supportive and is, welcoming the arts, and it's also open to, cultural initiatives. I mean, I've had to work with the First Lady, Governor's wife, a couple of times, and she supported, us in few projects. Even the recent time that we had a residency in this facility, she was also a part of it, and so I think that the government is quite open, is an open administration, but I can't really say so much because election is at the corner and things are bound to change. I don't know what's going to happen in the next few months from now. But right now, because the History and Heritage Department is like one of the few in the entire country, and it was started by this administration, by the current administration in Kaduna State. So with that, I can boldly say that yes, I mean they are quite open to an extent, but I can't really say right now because election is by the corner, and you were asking if I was going to go beyond dance, like becoming a politician or.
So not becoming politician. I'm looking at it from like a collaborative aspect, other art forms. So you're talking of, the creative arts in general, yes. Drama, you're talking of poetry, spoken word poetry, you're talking of drawings, paintings, yes. And stuff like that, When you bring these forms together, when you organize like a cultural activity and you entrench that within the life of a state, so you have like an occasional stuff, then people can come together like what you already mentioned. And so do you have like a project like that in mind? And I also wanted to ask, can you also tell us briefly what this department that the government started, why was it started? What was the focus of this history and I think history and heritage unit of the government?
So I was just kidding when I spoke about the politics, and I mean, the concept is open to collaborations. I mean, dance cannot be the only art form that we can use for this, and I'm really looking forward to having a festival that kind of like bridge the gap between contemporary artists and also traditional artists, because we need that synergy, to be able to bridge our different worlds, So I'm looking forward to maybe sometime in the nearest future, having a festival that kind of brings people, from different ethnic backgrounds, from different cultures. It's just be in one space and, have that connection and see what we can create. The idea of Compound is an explorative project. I mean, it's quite broad, and it can open up, into something quite big and something very innovative. So I'm really looking forward to having that festival. I'm really looking forward to exploring other cultures also. I've not even touched my own culture. I've not touched my tribe yet. I'm yet to go into Benue State, and connecting with the culture, with my roots. I'm yet to also travel to the West here. Like, if you look at Nigerian culture, we're so rich in culture. I feel like we can export culture. In fact, it's like oil for us, but it's yet untapped. If you look at it, and we are so rooted in our contemporary art. So I'm looking forward to having a space where we can connect these different art worlds, from contemporary artists to our cultural and native artists, and also sorry, the question about the Kaduna State. Yes. Okay, yeah. So the work is to actually preserve the history and our heritage contents that we have in our archives. So it's about preservation, just storing them, digitizing them, and also like telling history. I mean, sharing the story, that we've had to archive, from pre-colonial eras to now, to the present day. So it's about preserving the history and also, sharing it with the people to understand. I mean, we'll organize a few exhibitions, and we're looking to organize even another exhibition in the coming month to be sponsored by the Kaduna State government. So we're really looking forward to that, so that people can get to connect with their history also, to know what's happening and what has been happening in the past. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. We can give a round of applause to Ochai. Can you tell us where can we follow about, your news, Instagram, maybe?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Ochai Ogaba, Ochai_Ogaba. But if you type Ochai Ogaba, you will see me. And then you can also follow Mod Art Company. And for the historical and heritage work, you can also follow History and Heritage Preservation. On Instagram, you'll see it. I think these 3 Instagram handles.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, thank you again for coming. We will go to the second part of the event, so I would like to call our speakers to the stage, if you don't mind. Father Cornelius, Mrs. Khadija, and Prof. again, if you don't mind joining us on stage. Thank you. So just in a few words, I mean, the ambassador already has introduced you to the ideas of tonight, but both for Philippe and I, interreligious dialogue and interreligious relations has been a topic of research. And so we wanted to bring together specialists and experts of this field that we will introduce you in a second from, different backgrounds, civil society, academic, and also religious leaders themselves. So Philippe will introduce them, and then they will all each have 15 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Cyril. So my work is very simple. Permit me to read their bios from my phone. I think it's more comfortable for me like that. So I'll start with Professor Ogen. Professor Olukoya Ogen is a professor of history at Osun State University, Osogbo, and is also a visiting senior research fellow at the Department of African Studies and Anthropology, University of Birmingham in the UK. He was the country director of the European Research Council. He was the country director of the European Research Council-sponsored 5-year research grant on everyday religious encounter in Southwest Yorubaland. You should actually read about that project. Very interesting project. He will discuss his work on religious interactions in Nigeria and how the connection between African traditional religion, Islam, and Christianity is a defining feature of African identity. Can we please appreciate the great scholar among us? Yeah, in order not to be accused of being gender biased, I'll just skip further and come to Ajia so that I can come back. So, Ajia Khadija Awajagambo is an activist and a peace-building practitioner. She has worked for more than 30 years on resolving intercommunal conflicts in different parts of Nigeria and abroad, and is presently the permanent commissioner with the Kaduna State Peace Commission. She will discuss her work on preventing and countering violent extremism and radicalization in Nigeria, with focus on the gender dimensions of these interventions and also the gender dimensions of conflict resolution in general. Can we please appreciate her as well? Father Professor Cornelius Omonokwa, who I've enjoyed his company these past few days, is an ordained Catholic priest who has worked extensively on Christian-Muslim relations in Nigeria and internationally. He also has over 3 decades experience in this field. He was a consultor representing Africa to the Commission of Religious Relations with Muslims in the Vatican from 2010 to 2018. He is also the Secretary General of NIREC. He will share his experience as the current Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Interreligious Council, that's the NIREC I earlier mentioned, as well as his work as the current Secretary General of the West African Interreligious Council. Please let us appreciate Father Cornelius. So you agree with me that we have before us eminent personalities who are more than able to tell us about how religion can be used, you know, in this rebuilding project together, looking forward to the future. So I think the first thing would be to invite them generally. We've spoken about them, but I think the first thing would be to invite them to, you know, give us a sneak peek into the work that they have been doing so that we can now begin to engage them from the proceeds of what we have from what they give to us. So I'll start with Ajia in terms of the Kaduna State Peace Commission, which I think is a very relevant aspect of the state within, of course, from the last presentation we had from Ochai, how the state has been bedeviled by a series of ethnic and religious conflicts, you know, of the past. So how has the commission been able to tackle it, and how have you brought in your own experience, you know, into the work of the commission?
Okay. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Can you hear me?
Can I hear, please?
Okay, thank you. I think it's an honor for me to be here, seated, you know, among these distinguished personalities to speak about some of the work that we are doing, we've been doing and we're still doing in Kaduna State. But permit me to start by saying, yes, I'm from the north. I just had this, I learned it from the guy that just left, you know, to say I'm a northern, beyond saying I'm a Nigerian. So yes, I originally from Kano State, my father, but settled in Plateau, so I was born in just north Plateau State. And I'm giving this background so that you appreciate what I'm going to be talking about. Just like the artist that left, I'm not good with names. So please permit me if I don't mention your name, he just left, but I'm not very good with names. Just like him, I also have my own experience, having been born in Plateau State, which is just like the issues in Plateau and Kaduna are similar, just that they have different names, Kaduna and Plateau. But when you look at them critically, you realize that what obtains in Plateau is what you will get in Kaduna State. So I was born in Plateau State. And this issue of intercommunal clashes that we talk about in Kaduna State, like I said, you find them also in Plateau, in fact, even worse than what is happening in Kaduna. But for Kaduna being the headquarters of the North, I think what is happening in Kaduna gets more popularity than what happened or what is happening in Plateau State. Now, having come from Plateau, so I'm coming with an experience of someone who has passed through series of violence, even if personally I have not been, you know, I have not been affected, but at least close relations and the terror, the fear of, you know, being the target of attack because of the belief you carry with you or what you profess or the ethnic community you belong to are some of the reasons why you could be killed anywhere. So Kaduna, Nigeria has, which is known to all of us, over 50-something ethnic communities, different ethnic communities, with different cultures, of course, and the two major beliefs to be Islam and Christianity. Unfortunately for us, and I'm so happy that we have a historian here, a professor of history, who might corroborate what I'm going to be talking about. Unfortunately, since independence, nothing was ever done to bring Nigerians together because the diversity is very much there. Nigeria is a pluralistic society, and so there was a need for the leadership of the country to find a way of promoting harmonious coexistence and also social cohesion among the various regions and ethnic communities resident in the country. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And worst of it all was when we failed to even teach Nigerians their own history. For whatever reason, I do not know what happened, but we failed in that way also by not reading out our history whether positive or negative, at least that will preserve it in such a way that it will be very difficult for mischievous people to come up and be fermenting trouble on the basis of narratives that happened or didn't happen. We would have served ourselves the woe that we are passing through if we had preserved our history. So unfortunately, none of us, not even those who went to school, understand their history. So we live in a country where anybody can wake up any day and claim a particular place, claim ownership, and then exclude the other. And with without any authority, without any substantive history. So we have failed. And I was expecting even our universities, should preserve our history. But unfortunately, again, most of the history that we have are also full of biases and prejudices. They are not objective. So they do not objectively reflect Nigerians. Now, I'm just trying to give a context to what I'm going to talk about. Now, with all of this, Nigerians coexisted peacefully in the 60s, in the 70s. We lived together. I mean, our parents lived with one another without much problem, without much struggle, because one thing that was fundamental to them was humanity. Now, based on socialization or interaction, or whatever you call it, I do not know what happened. In the early 80s, the issue of this revivalism came in. And so a lot of people were traveling to Egypt, were traveling to Saudi Arabia, some were going to the US and all of those places, Europe and there. And so they came up with what they call in Nigeria now, what we now call the Pentecostals among the Christians. You talk about the Protestants among the Christians, among the Muslims, you talk about the Sunni, and even the Sunni, you talk about the Izala, you talk about the Shia. Like I said, I'm just providing a context so that I will address the issue of extremism. Now, in the 80s, that started coming into the country. New ideologies started coming in the name of revivalism. While in the 60s and 70s, all we had among Christians we knew were the Catholics and probably the Anglicans. And the Catholics had schools, and so some of us were beneficiaries. I am a beneficiary of the Catholic school. And nobody amongst us, especially in the North, was forced to convert to Christianity, even though we went to their schools. So we could say at that time they were peaceful, there was love, there was compassion, even from the Christians. And the Muslims were not as confrontational also as we have today. So revivalism started happening amongst Muslims, and we started a call, using the mosque to propagate these new ideologies of purification of belief. The Christian also started with the coming of the Pentecostals. And unfortunately, the government didn't look their way. Nobody cared that it was going to become a problem for us in the country. And so people started becoming conscious of their identity. And I think that was the first thing that happened, to make Muslims to become conscious of their identity by distinguishing themselves in the way they dress, in the way they speak, in the way they conduct themselves, and so also the Christians needed to do that also. It was on both sides. Now, the name calling started, preaching, with hate speech, calling names, blacklisting the other, claiming piety, exclusively for a particular community as against the other. So, with the country going through economic hardship, political tussle, and all of that, so it was very, very convenient for the elites now to reinforce the division that was happening by telling us who we are, using politics to divide us further. And so they will always tell Nigerians, because they want to use you. So the best way to get them is divide them so that you can perpetually rule them. And that was what was happening in the country. So extremism on the part of politics, extremism on the part of religion, And so people started becoming aggressive. Even when you talk about the North, we talk about over 250-something ethnic communities. But the North is a residence for over 80% of these ethnic communities. So you can expect that even where you have intercommunal clashes, that of the North will be worse. Because in the Northwest, probably you might have 10 different ethnic communities. When you go to, in the Southwest, probably not more than 10. In the Southeast, probably not more than 10. In the South-South, probably not more than 50. I don't think it will be up to 50. But so the chunk of the rest are all resident in the North, whether Northwest, whether North Central, whether Northeast. But worse is North Central, because there's a concentration of a particular community and religious belief in the Northwest and Northeast as the majority than you can have in North Central, where Kaduna now has become also a bone of contention as to whether it is in Northwest or it is in North Central because of this push for middle belt. So, yeah. So, extremism, quickly. Now, the North started experiencing violence in the name of ethnicity, reinforced by religion. So we now realized that it is not enough to address issues of just ethnicity without looking at religion. And so what do we need to do? There's a need for us, and that's when Malam Nasru El-Rufai came as the governor of Kaduna, because Kaduna also has had share of the violence that happened. I was shocked when he said a terrorist state. I didn't want to ask that question, but I don't think Kaduna is a terrorist state. Probably there's a lot of terror in Kaduna. I can admit that. But to say Kaduna is a terrorist state, I think that's something too harsh on us. So, having been from Plateau and working on issues of peace, I was invited by Malam Nasru El-Rufai when he decided to constitute what is called the Kaduna State Peace Commission, and I went there as a permanent commissioner. So what we've been doing is we've been trying to facilitate dialogue among the diverse groups in Kaduna, majorly driven by the division on either being Muslims or Christians. And so I will say for sure that one of the things I have discovered in my work with people for over 30 years is that whether we like it or not, Nigerians are so radicalized. There's so much radicalization in us. It does not necessarily have to be religious radicalization, but even when we fight on ethnic division, you could see people are radicalized. And also extremism. There's so much extremism. And so the need to look beyond just looking at it from the perspective of, okay, people are poor, people are this, people are that, but that we need to really deal with the issue of extremism, where intergenerational, narrative of hate, people saying we suffered in the hands of their great-grandfathers, we were dispossessed of our land, there's apprehension that they're going to take over, there's apprehension, there's a push to Islamize, and so all of this, I think, are our realities. We cannot just continue to shy away from them. These are realities, whether false or right, people hold on to these claims, and it is reinforcing the kind of violence we see. So what we're doing now, essentially, is trying to bring people back to understand their history. And I'm going to end it here before you ask me to stop. That we have coexisted together for centuries, even before Nigeria became Nigeria. We have known and learned so much about one another. It's true, we know so much about one another. Unfortunately, today, we are pretending as if we've never lived together. We pretend that it's because we don't know. I don't think Nigerians don't know. We know, but certain things have happened, and so we are pretending not to know. So I think we need to agree that there are issues, and that as ethnic communities, all of us, everybody is either a perpetrator, we are all perpetrators, and we are all victims. So how do we now come together and say, okay, this is our country, this is the only place we have, we don't have any other country, and we have no choice, we have no option, but to adopt interreligious discussions amongst us, so that by so doing, we will strengthen understanding and respect for one another, where Nigerians will not look at you and respect you based on the ethnic community you come from or the religion you profess, but based on the fact that you're a human being worthy of respect. So I think this is a conversation that we are opening in Kaduna, where people are beginning to talk among themselves, not minding whether you are minority or majority, but that we are all equal in this country as citizens of the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Father Cornelius, if you want to take the floor, maybe?
Good evening, sisters and brothers. One day, the philosopher Socrates was strolling in his garden, and the man walked up to him and asked, "Wise sage, at what age do I begin to teach my child wisdom?" And Socrates asked, "How old is your child?" He said, 5 years old. Socrates said, "Oh no, you are 6 years late already." Can you imagine that? That means there is a kind of anthropological foundation to character, to dialogue, and to mission. Today is very unique in my life. Unique in the sense that today is the day God gave me a second chance. On the 27th of January last year, this was exactly the time I left the theater when I had my spinal cord surgery. And for a whole year I was tied down, so I don't take that for granted. Life is a gift from God, and we cannot toy with it. I'm a child of parents with mixed religions. My father was a traditional priest. My mother was a child of a Muslim. My maternal grandfather was a Muslim. My uncle was the chief imam of my village. On the 8th of September 1990, when I was ordained a priest, my uncle, the imam, was with his turbans in front of the St. Paul's Catholic Church to witness my ordination. He celebrated it and he was happy. When I was growing up, I've told you my father was a traditional priest. My father has 4 children. I'm at last. And I had a stepmother. Whenever I go to the river, my mother would say, "Go and fetch water for your mother." He called my stepmother my mother. If I go to fetch firewood, he would want me to do the same for my stepmother. He will make gari and he will ask me to go and bring sauce from her, what we call soup. So he drew me so close to my stepmother that we became so close. Then something happened one day. Because this particular thing is so unique, I remember the year 1990. I started driving on my own. I drove from Benin City to my village, Irekba. I'm from Irekba. I met my stepmother sick. I took her to the hospital. She was well. She came back. I expected a big hug, like he used to do, come and sit on my laps. But she didn't do that. Rather, she was crying. And what was the content of her tears? If I had killed you, who would have taken me to the hospital now? I could not reconcile taking you to the hospital and killing me. It didn't click. I said, can you tell me more? She said, I loved you, but I hated your mother. And of course, I understand. No woman would want to share a man with another woman. Because my mother was a second wife. And that was easy for me to forgive. But he said, I really wanted you dead to hurt your mom. So after telling me that, I went back to my mother. Look at what your second is telling me. But how come that you were always pushing me to her? He said, yes. I did not want you to grow up with hatred in your hearts. I did not want you to grow up with hatred in your hearts. That in empirical psychology is called debriefing. Because when we were born, what I would call the theater of the labor world, there are some experiences that must have happened to us when we were being born that have registered in our subconscious mind. What I would call the long-term memory store or the short-term memory store. So what is the root of the conflict in our world today? Not just in Nigeria. When you use the word conflict, you are talking about different forms of conflict. And the first among them is intrapersonal conflict. Like you desire something you can get, and you are split into two, what becomes schizophrenic, like St. James would say in the Bible. You want something, you can get it, and so you want to kill to have it. And that intrapersonal conflict leads to interpersonal conflict. And there's intranational, intra-community. And all this intra leads to inter. So, now, I work for NIREC. And before I worked for NIREC, I had worked for, in fact, I started this dialogue work since 1991. And I come to realize that in this great country called Nigeria, whether you like it or not, Nigeria is beautiful. Should I die today and God give me the freedom to choose where I want to be born again, I want to still be a Nigerian. At Nigeria, I want to be forever and ever. Now, the problem of Nigeria is not religion. We have been talking about Kaduna. I've been to Kaduna. I have friends in Kaduna. I can recite Surah Al-Fatiha, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Maliki yawmid iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas sirata mustaqim, sirata al-ladzina an'amta alaihim, ghayril maghdubi alaihim waladdallin. Amen. I did not go to Arabic school. Father Cornelius, how did you come about that? It was when I was in Afuzi. There was a Malam who teaches Karatu, what we call Karatu. Karatu actually means school. But those of us who learn how to read and write Arabic, they say they are learning Karatu. This man is from Kaduna. I visit him, he visits me. He is the son of this man who taught me how to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Yes, I studied Islamic theology up to master's level, but in English, not in Arabic. So, the problem we have in this country is not it's not even inter-ethnic, it's not intercultural. Then ask me, Cornelius, then what is the problem? The problem is just one word. You know what the word is? Greed. So, our leaders, some of them, not all of them, who are plagued with intrapersonal conflicts and with the maniac, that is power maniac. They want to lead, they want to rule the world. They know how sensitive religion is. They know how sensitive ethnicity is. They will ignite that fire. Remember, in conflict, all you need is to ignite a small spark that can lead to an inferno. We are talking of Boko Haram. When Muhammad Yusuf started, he was not attacking churches. He was a political thug to the then governor of Borno State. Remember that a politician will tell you, you will be a good politician if you are not a liar. They will promise you only what God can give. They will promise you over heaven and earth. So they will equip our youth, give them arms, forgetting that these youth are also, but they will not allow their children into this kind of political thuggery. So, that is why NIREC, this year, by the grace of God, we want to have a youth summit. We want to really conscientize our youth. NIREC started in 1999. And by the way, I would like to introduce the member of NIREC here to you. I'm here already. The administrative secretary is here, Mr. Ruben, is right here. My confidential secretary is here, Nana Idris. My personal secretary, my PA is here, the youngest couple in the world. He just got married in December and is doing her honeymoon in Lagos. The honeymoon is not complete yet. I think it will be completed in about 3 days' time, I'm sure, so you can resume work fully. So NIREC in 1999, they discovered that Nigeria could be better. So the Christians and the Muslims decided to come together under the platform of Nigeria Interreligious Council. And this was formed by two groups, Christian Association of Nigeria and Nigeria Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs. So the president of the Christian Association of Nigeria and the President General of the Supreme Council, Nigeria Supreme Council, become the co-chairman of NIREC. At NIREC, we have different departments or different committees that we work with. And it was 25 Christian, 25 Muslims before, but it has been increased with the new constitution to 30 Christian and 30 Muslims. So, what have we been doing? From my office, we do monitoring and evaluation of the press, both social media and print media and electronic media, to try and curb hate speeches so that we can address these people or make them directly. Yeah, if I want to tell you what NIREC is doing, we may not live here today because I know my time will still be up. But basically, like when you heard of the inferno that was going to erupt, religious inferno in, what is it called, in Port Harcourt, Trasamadi, we intervened. We brought in the Muslim, the chief imam, to our office and brought in a lot, and only to discover that the stories that were in the newspaper was not really true. Then we have been hearing about, you must have heard of what happened, where they wanted to, where it was alleged that they wanted to demolish a church of over 100 years. And we intervened, it was not done. December, ASU was to go on strike. I'm sure you know that. But we believe that as NIREC is a dialogue between Christian and Muslim, the students will be affected are either Christians or Muslims. The lecturers in question are either Christians or Muslims. So in the NIREC meeting of last year, I was directed to write to ASU, which I did. So because of that, they suspended their strike. That they are not on strike because dialogue is ongoing to make sure that government play their own role while ASU play their own role. So NIREC is also not just a national body. We are affiliated to Religious for Peace in New York, Africa Council of Religious Leaders headquarters in Nairobi, and of course we have West Africa Interreligious Council, where I am the Secretary General. So maybe as we continue with the questions that will erupt, we got to know actually the action plan of NIREC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Father. Prof, if you may.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. It's a delight for me to be here this evening, and I want to thank the organizers of this great event, particularly IFRA. It has given me an opportunity of sharing my ideas and learning from this distinguished audience. And again, my friend, the director of IFRA, is an opportunity. We are bonding again after more than a decade. And Cyril, thank you. Dr. Layoko, thank you very much. Yes, we are here to speak on interfaith dialogue, religious interaction, and how that can bring national cohesion in Nigeria. Thank you, Mr. Osei Ogaba, for that beautiful commentary. You know, when you finished, I became suddenly afraid, because Yoruba land, which is the focus of my research, is credited with this relative, peaceful, inter-religious relationship, harmonious relationship. And when you now mentioned how Kaduna was peaceful in the 70s, in the 60s, and now with what is happening, I was wondering, is it possible for Yoruba land to also, witness what we are presently witnessing in parts of the north? That got me scared. And then I suddenly remember that there's this thing that we call the factor of tradition in development, the factor of tradition in human development and occurrences. Do we, and I begin to ask myself, do we have a culture of religious violence in northern Nigeria based on history? What is happening now? Because they say history repeats itself. Has it ever happened before in the north? What were the causes? How was it addressed? Because my little knowledge, I'm a student of history, I discovered that the behavior of some of our leaders in the north are not quite different, if not worse, than the behavior of the Habe rulers that brought about the 1804 Sokoto Jihad. So what is happening in the north will have to be addressed when we begin to address the population that is not being fed properly, the population that is deprived of education, the population, the chronic abject poverty. When you have failure of leadership, that is when you begin to see this kind of things rearing its head. So that is where to start from. Responsible leadership. How to address the corruptive tendencies of our leaders. The gap between the rich and the poor, which is widening every day. People can no longer afford to eat, so they are prepared. I'm not sure the bandits are kidnapping only Christians. They are also kidnapping Muslims. So, and bandits are taking over. They are collecting taxes. That is a state of anarchy. That is failure of leadership. So the same thing happened. So that is history for you. When you refuse to learn from history, this thing reoccur. And I look back and I ask myself again, in Yoruba land where I've conducted my research, do we have a tradition of religious crisis? Do we have a culture of this kind of conflict? So, because culture is central to everything that we do. So, as a historian, they say all knowledge is historical, and you can specialize. During my postdoc in the UK and in the US, I moved into studying aspects of our religion. And eventually, my partner in the UK, in Sanolte, of the University of Birmingham, we applied for a grant, and we got this EROC grant for a large-scale survey of religious interaction in Yoruba land. The survey covered the entire 6 southwest states, and later we added Kwara State. The survey, almost 3,000 respondents, apart from qualitative interviews, apart from archival search and the relative literature. We moved around ethnographic survey, and we discovered that what I started with, this factor of tradition, was central in the kind of cohesion, the relative peace, the relative harmonious religious interaction that you have in Yoruba land. We discovered that the monotheist religion, Islam and Christianity, were really, in a way, fundamentally different in their orientation from the polytheist religion, that's our African traditional religion, as we have it. So where you have Ogun, Oya, Oshun, different deities coexisting, interacting, that gives room for accommodation. So when the two foreign religions were coming, it was also easy to accommodate. So there's a culture of accommodation, there's a culture of tolerance already on ground. And like the Yoruba will say, they will say, ẹ jẹ́ kí eléégún ó bọ eégún, ẹ jẹ́ kí ọlọ́ya bọ Ọya, ẹ jẹ́ kí ọlọ́ṣun bọ Ọ̀ṣun. The meaning of that is that people that are worshiping Ogun, people, you allow them to worship their Ogun. People that are worshiping Oya, you allow them to worship their Oya. People that are worshiping Oshun, you allow them to worship so that there will be peace. So it was against that background, that philosophical background, that cultural milieu that these foreign religions came. So it was easy to accommodate this foreign religion. That is my first, that is my first thesis, that you already have a culture that was very accommodating, you know, cultural diversity, religious diversity, everything. So it was easy for Yoruba people to accommodate the foreign religion. You know, there's one thing that was central about our research. Earlier scholars have concentrated their attention on the causes of religious crisis. But we decided to say the causes of harmonious relationship, so that other societies can learn from the Yoruba experience. So, and along the line, we now discover that the major religions, it was difficult, extremely difficult to even get a typical Yoruba family that is not religiously diverse. Sometimes you have the mother being a Christian and the father being a Muslim. Some intermarriages was very common because we even moved that even beyond religious tolerance, there were other factors defining our social identities, defining the way people relate with one another, such as gender, even education. You know, the early missionaries, you know, by the time in a town, maybe you have 3 schools and all of them are Christian schools, and the Muslim will have to go to school. So they have no alternative than to attend those Christian schools. Then conversion starts. So that is even beyond tolerance. We are talking about factors that were in place that guaranteed this harmonious relationship. There's another adage which simply goes thus. Again, I will interpret in English for the benefit of our non-Yoruba audience. And it says, is a song, and it goes thus, that Awa o shoro ile wa, awa o shoro ile wa o, ẹ̀sìn kan ò pé káwa má ṣòro, awa o shoro ile wa o. The meaning is that whether you're a Christian or a Muslim, we have to worship our ancestral gods. That there's no religion that prevents you from worshiping. You consider that kind of song. So when you have a Muslim and it is the day to worship Ogun, you see him, you know, if he's not participating, he's not disturbing you. You know, he sits back. So there's a culture of accommodation, there's this tolerance, and that is what obtains till today. Curiously enough, we have now discovered that there's even a resurgence. Because the thinking before was that because of the monotheist religion, nobody is paying attention to traditional African religion. But we now discover that in some of the places where we conducted our research, places like Ikene, Irolu, parts of Okitiukwa, people are coming together. They are getting converts from Christians and Muslims. Temples, Orumila temples are coming out. They have parishes, and they worship. You know, that is resurgence of a renaissance of traditional religious practices that is taking place, and they are getting more and more converts every day. Sometimes, you know, the unfortunate aspect of it is that they even get violent. If they ask you not to beat drum for a particular period of time and you say you are a Christian, you need to, you know, they get violent because they want to enforce those methods, those ways of doing things. We had workshops, we had several conferences, we had town and gown meetings where Christians, Muslims, traditionalists, they came together, we interacted, debate, how do you resolve conflicts? We ask questions, how do you resolve conflicts? How come we have not heard of any escalation of Christians attacking Muslims, or Muslim attacking Christians, or traditionalists attacking? And it was simply because of this issue about accommodation. But, you know, like I said, what other societies can learn from the Yoruba experience? And, you know, we are being hopeful that that situation will continue, will improve, will improve. It is simply about good governance. It is that culture where it is given, you can stone your leaders, you can question them, you can be, you know, any society that has a very viable opposition, where you ask questions, that society eventually will develop. But where you cannot ask questions, where the leader is there because he's supposed to be there. Because in Yoruba land, you discover, you question your governor, you abuse them, you throw stones if they are not doing well, you criticize them, you have a very vibrant media, you know, you force them to do the right thing, you force them to be responsible. With time, there's a possibility that the kind of things that we are witnessing in other parts of the country, you know, will not occur here. So what my submission is that the problem that we have, just like I want to agree with my Reverend Father, is not actually religion. It's about failure of leadership. It's about having responsible leaders who are not corrupt. You know, Nigeria has more than enough resources to take care of everybody. You know, the gap between the rich and the poor is just too much. The rich are enjoying, especially the top elite. They are enjoying, seriously. And then, on the other hand, is abject poverty. You know, unbridled population explosion. It's not possible. Something will have to give. So I want to stop for now. By the time we are taking the questions, we'll be able to fill in the gaps. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. And I think it's interesting how the different contributions also spoke to each other. So there were different themes that I heard in all of your contributions. The failure of leadership and the role of leadership also in inspiring people and in providing also an example and, you know, good governance. Also the role of history and preserving history and teaching history and, you know, giving information. And also the issue of, you know, us as human beings at the end of the day. This is also our role to grow, to learn, to educate ourselves. So if you have any questions, any comments, the floor is open. We have around 25 minutes. Don't leave us after during the Q&A because we have a very nice cocktail at the end. This is how we keep you here. So yes, please, the floor is open. Questions or comments?
Thank you very much for these wonderful presentations. I mean, they were really eye-opening. And I quite enjoyed just listening to the three of you speak. But just to pick up on, I mean, one of the hints that the theme that popped up when you spoke was that the problem of the country is not religion. I mean, this is just going to be like a prelude to my question. I think religion is a big problem in this country. I mean, because one can already see the role that religion plays in legitimizing authority and leadership in this country. You know, certain people wouldn't vote for certain people if they are not from the same religious background. So, and certain problems that we are facing in terms of why this meeting is conveyed today is because we need to find a way to bridge that tension that arises from varieties of our religious belief. So I think religion is indeed a problem But my question is, therefore, because there's something, I mean, I'm a Christian, but I feel like maybe it would be nice if there's maybe a secularist or kind of atheist on this panel, maybe for next time. But because it seemed to me like the project here is to talk about how we can open up our individual beliefs and our individual religions to basically secularize it, so that people give room for interpretation and for critical thinking. So what role do you think that the acceptance, the public acceptance of secularism and people or young people who are growing up who don't want to identify with any religion based on the problems that they've seen religion and religious beliefs, and that the coercion and that is forced on young people, just to practice that, to live in a certain way. So what role do you think that atheism and secularism and the acceptance of deviance from religion, what role do you think this can play in maintaining social cohesion and peace? That's my question.
Just one more question, maybe? One more question, maybe?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. My name is Toby. Thank you very much for the talk. I'm actually, I've been enlightened for me to even first be hearing about these panelists today. I feel like, a lot has been under the rubble that needs to come out about religion and acceptance in Nigeria. So when you were speaking, especially Madam Khadija, you said the Peace Commission is, you've been trying to promote dialogue in the North, and, that's the first step to bridging the gap, within these different perspectives and views, world views. So I was keen, I think the question that came to my mind is, what has been the reaction, what's working so far in these, I don't know whether there are sessions that you are having, so that even us in, Lagos, everywhere else in Nigeria can begin to adopt perhaps the things that you are learning from these dialogues in, the tension that, comes up when we have, in our own experience here in Lagos, or anywhere else in Nigeria, because I think it's very crucial. It's one thing to see the fact that, the efforts are being made, maybe in the rural settings, but even here in the urban centers, like, we find out that there's that tension, and even if it's not pronounced, you can be, because we are civil, people can be very silent about, some of these things, but in decision making, maybe when they're hiring, or, just using hiring as an example, there are these religious conflicts that affect, like, our society is moving forward. So I'd like to learn also, like, from Father Cornelius, like, what are, like, some of these things that are tested, that are working when you go about this bridging the religious conflicts in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We can start with you.
With a lot of respect to Prof, the historian, let me say there's always been this issue between practitioners and people from the academics, And anyway, respectfully, I wish to say that, sir, one of the causes of our problem today is that we've taken for granted too many things. I listened to you when you talked about Yoruba land being culturally peaceful. To assume that you might not, not even might, that you will not have such issues. Sir, I want you to revisit this. I'm not a prophet of doom, but I want to tell you that as a practitioner, I am more concerned about those who are not speaking than those who are speaking. Probably as a teacher, you only listen to those who speak. For me, I am trained to look at those who are not talking and try to find out what's happening. There are a lot of dissenting voices in Yoruba land, a lot of dissenting voices in Igbo land. And the worst we can do for them is to ignore it and say it will never happen. So please, sir, do something before it happens. But we can sense it, we are feeling it, and we don't want it to deteriorate to what is happening in the north. The second thing is whether we like it or not. I have always argued this, when we come to talk about gender, and men want to ridicule us, they say, you women are confused. The first time you said equality, when it was not working, you say mainstreaming? Then you change now to what? I said, well, we are not interested in what you call it. The truth is that the reality is that there are issues. So whatever you call it, whether it's equality, whether it's mainstreaming, whether it's equity, women have issues with the way they are being treated. So I will take it that whether we admit or we don't admit that Nigeria has among the spices or the ingredients of all of the conflict that we are having now, that religion is part of it, I want to tell you that as a practitioner, it's one of the things we keep hearing each time we sit with people. It might not necessarily be that religion is the cause, but people use religion to gain sympathy, and that's why when something is happening in Kaduna, don't be surprised. I was with you in the UK. We were in Wilton Park with him. My first time of meeting him, just a few days to Corona, when Corona started visiting us. We were there, and we for days we were not talking because at our level, everybody was taking side. So you can see that imagine him with his exposure and what he could defend certain things that he shouldn't defend. And at my level, I'm defending what I shouldn't defend. So you can imagine what happens at that level. So what I'm saying is that the elites, I said, have managed to shrewdly sell to our people that they should be conscious of their religious identity because they want to manipulate, they want to use us, and that's why now, even in our politics, you don't need to go and campaign. All you need to do is get these religious leaders who have now become an empire in themselves. They have become so relevant, and so they talk to them. And so, again, even the religious leaders are part of the problem. Because religion now is being used. When I was hearing this opium of the masses, I thought it was communism, so I hated that word as somebody who is I'm an unrepentant Muslim. So I used to take offense when they say religion is an opium until I looked at Nigeria critically. Then I said, yeah, I'm beginning to believe in this Marxist position about that. So the reality is that then there's need to interrogate the divine, and I quote and unquote, authority of these religious leaders who indoctrinate people, and that's what is happening in the country. People are being indoctrinated, people are now radicalized, like I said, and so everybody, all of the killings, most of the killings, the maiming, the destructions are happening in the name of God. While Islam and Christianity have altruistic values of compassion, of love, of kindness, which I talked about, that we used to witness in 60s, where the Christians, you know them and identify them by the churches and hospitals that they build, not by the singing and chanting of Jesus Christ that we see now, or the Muslims who, like I said, were compassionate also, and were not confrontational like we see today. But now, there's so much confrontation. Even in our politics, it must be a Muslim president. No, it must be a Christian president. It must. So what are we talking about? If it is not religion, there is no reason, there's no business of Islam and Christianity defining who becomes our president, or defining who becomes our vice president, or defining who becomes our governor. Kaduna State became a focus of violence, of this violence that we talk about, and refusing to look at Plateau, for example, because of the governor that was sitting on that seat. If it were probably someone else, it could have been somebody. So I'm just saying that Islam and Christianity are being used. Sigmund Freud, the psychoanalyst, said something that, when they tried to define religion, and they couldn't define religion because it is something that you don't feel, you don't see, you couldn't do empirical research. So they talked about the sociology of religion. And he said one of the reasons why people are religious is because of hope. So sometimes I look at Africans because we are very, very religious. Nigerians are the most religious people, but very few are godly. So I want us to understand the distinction between being godly and religious. So we are religious, and maybe one of the reasons that we have taken to be religious is because of the failure that we've talked about. There's so much poverty in the land. There's so much everything that you are not happy with in the land. And so people now resort to being religious as the only way, solace. So the last one, the question you asked. So the first one, Nigerians will continue to be religious. Yes, from what I see, they will continue to be religious. Maybe it's a way, it's a solace to them. That's the only hope they have. And that's why they do what God should do and leave what they should do to God. The second thing, we do what God should do, and then we leave what you should do to God. We don't work. You know, the French people, I admire you so much. You are hardworking. In my room, I saw something, I laughed. They said, use anything in this room. I smiled. I said, oh, I'm happy. But they said, when you finish, make sure you put it back. I said, what is this? You give, you take. So this is the European for you. But for us, everything, we take everything for granted. So we will continue to be religious, please. For you that you ask us what we've been doing in Kaduna, well, it is not easy because there are a lot of, it's a pot of salad, you know, salad, different issues in Kaduna. It's not just about religion, it's not just about ethnicity, it's about land, it's about historical, you know, we are angry with these people because of jihad, because of this and that. So it's a variety of issues. So what we have decided to do is for example, these interreligious dialogues. We've decided to create what we call now the House of Kaduna Family, where we brought Christians and Muslims 11, one women, one from Christianity, one from Islam, and then 10 men, you know, the almighty men, all of them there, 20, and then 2 women. Now, what do they do? In situations where we are confronted with issues of religion, because of their influence, we put them forward, and then they initiate the dialogues, and that's how it happens. Now, where we have to do mediation and other things, then most of us that are there, some of us are expert in that, and so we do it. Now, what has been working, I just want you to understand something. I think we must give credit to Kaduna State, because at least for some months now, the place is quiet. Nobody's talking about violence in Kaduna. So that tells you that something is happening. And true to the initiative of the governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, who decided to bring up this peace commission, and we're working tirelessly with all of the different divergent groups, making sure that their concerns are being addressed, concerning, you know, good governance, concerning how to stop corruption, which is a tough one, concerning how to service delivery, inclusion, and all of that. And that's what we're, so there's citizen engagement even. We've initiated what we call citizen engagement, where the governor sits, and then the citizens sit, and they ask questions, the government answers, and sort of that. So we've initiated many platforms that will make people feel included. Because one of the things that make people angry, and that is reinforcing the hate and violence, is that a lot of people are complaining of being excluded. And so we're trying to make sure that whatever is happening in the state, there's inclusion, everybody feels represented to some extent, so that we're able to silence the dissenting voices that are calling to violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank Aja very much, and my brother, the professor. When I say that religion is not a problem, I see religion as a kind of accident. I'm very sure that if Aja was born in Onitsha to a Christian parent, he would have been a Christian. Or maybe if I was born into your family, maybe I would have been a Muslim. There's something that is basic that we need to concentrate on. That is humanity. That is what brings all of us together. Yes, it is true that there are people who claim to be Christians because they have a Christian name, or maybe they are baptized. And somebody may claim to have been a Muslim just because he has recited his Shahada. But it does not do what your religion asks you to do. Take the Quran, for example. The Quran is very clear that if you kill one person, it's as if you have killed the whole world or the whole of humanity. And if you save one person, it's as if you have saved the whole of humanity. And of course, in Christian religion, the value of your religion is love. The last NIREC meeting we had, the governor of Plateau State was there. 2 bandits were arrested. And one was bearing a Christian name. And one was bearing a Muslim name. And they asked the one, what is your name? He mentioned. He said, I'm a Christian. And the governor said, keep quiet. The thing you have done, where is it written in the holy book of Christianity that you should do it? The other one said, I'm a Muslim. He said, what thing? Okay, I'll give you an example. I had an interview with a woman from Borno State. How a boy who is a Muslim who was asked by his Muslim parents not to join Boko Haram. This boy came back from the camp with 4 boys to come and rape his mother. Where is that in the Quran? So you could see that I used myself as an example at the beginning. What if my mother had told me, don't go to that woman. That woman hates you. That woman wants to kill you. You think when I now grow up, I'll take her to the hospital? I will not. So there are people who have used religion, like Kaja had said, to their advantage. And if you read this article by Bishop Kuka, you know, how this whole thing started. And in one of my books, I said, if song never existed, children are growing up, you are indoctrinating them, you know, maybe as Christian and Muslims, and you just think things are normal. I use the word greed, and I use it deliberately. In my own area, I'm not from the north, I'm from Edo State. A village near my village, assassin attacked a church. They wanted to kill the pastor. And they were arrested. Who said the assassin? Another pastor. And what was the reason? That is collecting my members. Is he collecting? Where is he leading the members to? To the grave, or to hell, or to heaven? And why is he so desperate? Because he needed money. And they think that if the people are not in the church, the money will not come. And of course, you know, during the COVID, while we were working, we were really working during the COVID-19 lockdown. Some pastors were advertising that they should pay tithe online and they should do collection online. So what was more, these are the people who are at home, they are not working, they are not doing anything. And they are suffering. You wanted to pay tithe, you wanted to do offering online. So that is why I say that it's not religion, but it's greed. But I want to really wrap up by saying that the moment we realize that we are human beings and that we are Nigerians, you talked about our meeting in Wilton Park. We have Christians, we have Muslims. Did we discriminate against each other? We are living as if we are not even from. So when you look deep into it, you discover that anything that is done in the name of religion carry the label of greed.
Thank you. It's like there's a general agreement now. Even Hadia will agree with me that religion is not the issue. but the way it is being manipulated. So we come back to good governance. Religion is being used to reinforce bad governance, failure of leadership, and there's no society. Once you have this kind of thing, what is happening in Nigeria is the dress rehearsal for a revolution. What is happening, all these things that is the dress rehearsal, and that is the way it has been happening in every society. I'm happy that in this distinguished audience, we have the French here, the French Revolution, Russian Revolution. Look at what, even in northern Nigeria, I insist, the 1804 jihad was because of the bad governance of the Habib rulers. So once you create that condition, in this audience now, who is going to be indoctrinated? It's not possible because of our level of education, our level of exposure. So what we are saying is educate these people, provide jobs for them, the resources that God has endowed Nigeria with. Let's have responsible, and if they are not doing it, let's ask them questions. Let's begin to ask, not this way of, you just want to join and corner your own loot. No, we must begin to ask them questions. We must put them to task. That is the foundation. That is the genesis of everything that is happening. The leaders are using religion, to make sure that they corner enough resources for them. But look at what is happening now. Members of the House of Representatives are being kidnapped. The thing is getting closer to them. Now their families cannot walk freely. When you have a leader that cannot walk freely in town, when you have a leader, you have to go and hide your mother. Your children have to go, it's coming. So by the time it gets to that stage, they will sit down. And that is what we are praying, that it will never get to that stage. Because even the after effect, because it's something, the law of unintended consequences. A lot of innocent people, serious social and economic dislocation. Lives will be lost. We are thinking that our leaders will get it right and know that, when you are given this responsibility to serve, you are to serve the people, not to serve yourself. What is happening in Nigeria now is that majority of our leaders are serving themselves at the detriment of the people that they are supposed to serve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. We're going to open up the floor for a last round of questions. But before we open up the floor, I just want to make 2 quick comments on the resurgence of traditional religion. So I'm saying this is not limited to the Yoruba land. I did a research in 2016 among the Egon, the Ombatse in Nasarawa State, And the beauty of it is that people of high intellect... Okay, so there was a night in a Catholic church that I spoke to who told me that he decided to return back to the traditional religion because after severally consulting with the bishop to say that my firstborn died 4th-year law miraculously. My wife died like 2 months later, miraculously. Now, my last child is about to die. My Lord, help me. And the bishop said, my son, I'll continue to pray for you. And he said, okay, if the prayer of the bishop all these years, that he had been in the church could not, could not be answered by God, then he had to go back to the ancestral way. So now, the point I'm trying to make is that he felt that this monotheistic religion, the tradition of Christianity, could not solve the problem of witchcraft, which they felt was prevalent, in Nasarawa State, especially among the Egon people. And the elders of the past had a way of managing this peculiar crisis. Perhaps the introduction of these new religions are not able to take care of some of these peculiarities from their own understanding. And so this led to some sort of resurgence among them. Then about the Southwest, saying that there's a culture of tolerance, and there's less likelihood of course, I'm a Yoruba person and I understand this context. But of recent, there is, like Aja has been saying, an increase in the voices of dissent. And it's subtle, you're not going to observe it. So where I grew up in Ibadan, the outskirts on the way to Osun, the place is Olodo, you see a sort of what you can refer to as an Islamic revivalism, You see a lot of Muslim schools, a lot of school children in hijab that I did not grow up witnessing. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. there's nothing wrong with having people express their religion. But there's everything wrong when you listen to the narratives of why they are creating these schools, within these locales. That's one. There's also a bit of an introduction of the northern economy that's expanding, across the southwest. Now, I'm not saying that that is a problem. I'm saying if we continue to see these people as the other, if we continue to see them as different, if we continue to see them as not part of us, then the more that we begin to live together and the more that we try to neglect these kind of frictions that are minute and insignificant at the moment, the more the likelihood of what, Aja is talking about. And so we should not just go and rest in the southwest, but we should be conscious of our we can't stop people from moving. That is the fact. But we can help ourselves to understand, how to live together and ensure that there's a culture of, coexisting, with one another. So that's what I wanted to just chip in. So if you have any question, then we're going to take that. Just last. Okay, there's somebody up there.
Yes, just one last question.
Okay, one last question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Bimbo Mopo. Yes, my question is, okay, I want to give a background to the question. I understand the fact that Pastor James Wuye and Imam Ashafa, at some point, they fought to protect the glory of their religion at the height of conflict in the north. And I facilitated an inter-religious dialogue program amongst young people at the University of Ibadan, sometimes last year. And then a concurrent narrative was this idea of they and them and us, quite different from us. They do not share the same ideologies with us and all. So what practical ways can young people contribute to nipping religious conflict in the bud before they rear their ugly heads? Because despite the fact that these folks were educated or are educated, they are university students, but they still felt that this lady on hijab is different from me, shares different ideologies from me, and ultimately would be different from me in all ways. Because one of them mentioned that anytime I see a Muslim woman in a full hijab or puda, I am always convinced of the fact that she might be hiding a bomb. Because at the time of the bomb blast in Abuja, she happened to be very close to where that incident happened. So since then, she had this consciousness of the fact that, okay, not of the fact, but that it is possible that a woman in a puda could be hiding a bomb in her dress. So what practical ways can we make young people, nip religious conflict in the bud before rearing their ugly heads? Thank you.
Thank you. Just maybe 1 more minute each, if you don't mind. A very quick answer. So we can just all leave with maybe one thing that we can change or one thing that we can improve.
Myself and Aja Kazaure, we went to give a lecture to the medical sisters, MMM. And when we were returning back, we were in the airport in Benin. And Aja told me he was going to pray. So I helped Aja to carry her bag. So one man walked to me, he said, "Sir, I'm a pastor." He said, "Well, how come that you are carrying the bag of that woman with full hijab? What if there is a gun in that bag?" So it has happened practically to me. But I just think that when we talk about education here, there's a difference between formation, learning, wisdom, knowledge. But I think formation should be integral. Take seminary, for example. If you fail Islamic theology in the seminary, you may not graduate. And if by the time the Christian can pick up the Holy Quran or Hadith or Sunnah and start reading, or maybe having that kind of interpersonal relationship, or the Muslim will be able to pick up a Bible like the son of Hamas in Israel and Palestine. And I think the Lord can change too. Because what I think is another problem we are having is this prejudice, preconception, mutual suspicion. So by the time we start studying the religion of the other, it will help to build trust and to also help to debrief and decongest the clouds in the hearts of our youth. That is religious clouds.
Thank you.
I don't know, I'm confused as to what to actually say in a very brief and concise way. But let me say that Islamophobia is not peculiar to Nigeria. Sometimes legitimately so, because something has happened and somebody is afraid. But again, the need to walk away from generalization and then collective guilt. Unfortunately, and I told you when we were talking, I said I raised that concern in the United States of America when I said to them, why Muslims? We were talking about extremism. And I asked the question, because I was the resource person there and I was to speak on that, and I said, why Muslims and why Islam? And then I interrogated, and it was a puzzling question, and I said, if we, as dwellers of this world, all of us, were equal stakeholders in this world, whether Muslims, Christians, or even atheists, or whatever you call yourself, we are all equal citizens of this world. And so because we're equal citizens of this world, then the need to make sure that everybody is safe, because the safety of that other is what makes me safe. So the world, there's a need for the world to open up. And now I'm talking to the whole world, to open up and understand that Muslim woman and that Muslim man. What is it about them that make them so special that everybody is afraid of them, that everybody does not want to associate with them, that terrorism, violence is associated to them? Is that true of Muslims, and is that true of Islam? So it is not just about reading the text, the divine scriptures, that will change this attitude. Because it's one thing to read and it's another to understand. Just like the Bible. Sometimes people make the mistake of picking it and reading it without knowing the ways of hermeneutics. And so they say there's violence in the Bible. So sometimes you read the Quran and you say there's violence in the Quran. And so you can understand why Muslims are violent. So what we need to do is go beyond the reading. Go beyond the reading and understand that I have said that there are Islam is one thing, a Muslim is another. That when somebody commits an act, it does not necessarily mean he is representing that faith that he belongs to. So when an Arab does something wrong, it is wrong of the world to conclude that, well, it's because he's a Muslim. And again, let us be just, in the sense that when an individual does something, we look at it as something, an act of an individual, rather than an act of an institution. So that day, that fear will go. So Islamophobia is a problem everywhere in the world. It's in the West, I've seen it. In Europe, it's there. In the US, even among Arabs, it's there. Even here in Nigeria, it's there. I remember when Boko Haram was happening, and somebody will tell you, hey, you are Boko Haram. It's offensive to us. But then again, legitimately so. They have every right to be afraid of us. But is it true that all of us that are Muslims, we are violent? No. So I think we need to begin, that conversation needs to continue to happen, and that's what brings us to interreligious discussions. That whether a Christian or a Muslim, it depends on the character of the person, who you are. You could be a Muslim and be violent. You could be a Christian and be violent. You could even belong to the new religion that he's talking about, where you have no business with the God that we're talking about, but it's still a religion. And then also be violent. So it has to do with the personality of the person. So how can we make Nigerians to be non-violent? And one of it is what the professor has just said. Let everybody feel included. Once everybody feel included, once there's inclusiveness in what we do, once we feel respected, once you don't scrutinize my passport because I'm a Muslim, because you see Khadija, and you say, okay, wait here, just go there, wait, you put me through hours. It creates some feeling of resentment. It create some feeling of not wanted, and anybody who is not wanted psychologically will create problem for you. So let's redefine this world to be the world for everybody, Muslim, Christian, believe in whatever. If you don't want to believe there's God, it's okay for you, but let us respect humanity. I think this is most essential, that humanity is fundamental, because a goat or a dog cannot be a Muslim. You must be a human being before you become a Muslim. You must be a Christian before you become a Muslim. So I think the human being is the most important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Prof?
Yes, to answer your question, there's no perfect society. You know, it is normal. There will be exceptional cases, you know. And it is important that we begin to address, we'll be talking about leadership failure. There's also parental failure. For instance, your level of tolerance, to a large extent, will depend on the kind of orientation that you get from home. So parents also have a role to play. In Ijebugo, for instance, there was this man, he's called Abusi Edumare, a Christian, Chief Kuti. He's a Christian, he was a Christian. He built the St. Matthew's Cathedral, donated it. He went ahead to build the Central Mosque, went ahead to build an Ifa temple. His children cannot see somebody wearing hijab and they will be afraid, because you know that from that family, that is the kind of tolerance that we're talking about. That is the triple heritage. You see somebody who was so accommodating. You know, so parental failure is part of the problem that we have in Nigeria. Most of the values, who we are, is to a large extent depends on the kind of home that we come out from, and that is where character comes in. It's not just religion, your character. Like Hajia has rightly said, you could be a Muslim and a terrible one. You can be a Christian, a very terrible one. And you can be even a practitioner of African traditional religion, and you'll be an excellent person, honest, straightforward. I have a doctor at Tonda, is a professor of medicine at Oshogbo. He will practice his medicine, and then if, peradventure, he's unable to cure you, he takes you to his temple. You know, and when people start, you know, accusing him, oh, you're a medical doctor, Western medicine, how come you have an African traditional temple? And he will ask them that you have doctors who are Christians. You don't ask them why they go to church. You have doctors who are Muslims. So why are you asking me? That is what I believe in. That is my religion, and it's working. So it's important that we teach our children to be very, very tolerant. You know, diversity is important. That is the beauty of the world. We cannot all think alike. We cannot all practice the same religion. We should let them know. We don't need to give them this impression that my idea, my language, my religion is the best. So that because once they grow with that kind of attitude, you know, they'll just see every Muslim is bad. That is my contribution.
Thank you very much. I think that concludes nicely this discussion. So a round of applause for our speakers. And for our moderator as well. Thank you again for Institut Français for sponsoring this event, and for Alliance Française for hosting us tonight. The event is not completely finished. There is a cocktail that is, you're all welcome outside on the terrace. So thank you again. You can follow IFRA, Institut Français, and Alliance on every social media. So we hope to see you for our next event. Thank you again.